Hey everyone, Reaper here again with another haul. I almost said comic book haul, but it's not a comic book haul. It's a little something different. This is a video about my PlayStation 1 collection. I got the idea to do this video from Don the comic book junkie, who got the idea from Punkhead66 video about his PlayStation 1 memories. I thought they were both really good videos with Don showing some of his PlayStation 1 games. Like Don, I have a lot of good memories of the PlayStation system, and I've been collecting them, or buying them rather, ever since a year after it came out, which was back in 1996. The system first came out in '95 here in the States, but I got it as a Christmas present in '96. And I'm a big PlayStation 1 fan, PlayStation 2, 3, and 4 fan. But I just wanted to show my games from the PlayStation 1, which pretty much started it all with my interest in the PlayStation system. I thought that the PlayStation, for me, the original one, was very similar to the Nintendo. The Nintendo, I thought, when it first came out, was very unique. The games were much different than Atari games, and pretty much started a lot of series that are still around today, like Mario games and Final Fantasy games and Castlevania games and so forth. And PlayStation also holds a lot of those really first-time games for me that later went on to PlayStation 2 and even the Xbox systems. But I've always found that the PlayStation was in the same category as Nintendo. So here we go. I'll try to make this video quick. I got a lot to go through. Alien Trilogy. One of those old PlayStation jewel cases. Now I have them in rows here, so just please bear with me. I took them off my shelf. They're in somewhat ABC order, but every now and then I forget my ABCs. Battle Tanks, Global Assault. Beyond the Beyond, which was the very first RPG for the PlayStation. Pretty good. First of the Legacy of Kain series, the Blood Omen. Breath of Fire 3, Capcom's RPG series. Brigantine by Atlas. Atlas is still a very good company that makes good RPGs. This is an RPG simulator game. Almost in the vein of Dragon Force for Sega Saturn. Sega Saturn was another good system that never really reached its stride. Bushido Blade, this was on Don's video. Really good game. I would say it's almost like a fighting game, but not really. There are one-hit deaths. So this came out around the time when there was Mortal Kombat and Street Fighter. So this offered a different take on the fighting genre, which I thought was refreshing and really good, but hasn't really been seen since. Or at least I don't think so. Bushido Blade 2, not as good as the first. Castlevania Chronicles. This is a remake of the old Nintendo Castlevania, and one of my favorite games of all time, Castlevania Symphony of the Night. If you don't have this game and you have a PlayStation account or an Xbox account, you can download it. I recommend you get it. Awesome game. It's similar like Metroid for Nintendo. Chrono Cross, which is the sequel to one of the most highly regarded RPGs, Chrono Trigger. Covert Ops, Nuclear Dawn. Let me do this correctly, because they all got to go back on the shelf in this order. Contra. Let me move it closer so you can see it. Contra: Legacy of War. I think it was the first 3D Contra. Yeah, 3D Contra. It's kind of sacrilege. Crash Bandicoot. This was the second game I bought for the system. Very cool game. Crash Bandicoot 2 and Crash Bandicoot 3. I'm a big fan of the Crash Bandicoot series. Destruction Derby 2. This is I bought this from Funkoland. It only came with the disc. It's Discworld 2. It's one of those point-and-click games, if you like that type of genre. Dino Crisis, similar, made by Capcom in the vein of Resident Evil. Driver. Dynasty Warriors, the very first one. Those of you that play games and play Dynasty Warriors or Samurai Warriors today, you know there are good hack and slash games. Well, Dynasty Warriors started out as a fighting game, sort of like Soul Calibur. All right. Let me get this out of here and move on to the next set. If you just bear with me. Put these down so I don't crack the jewel cases. Einhander, a game similar to Radiant Silvergun. Not as good as Radiant Silvergun, but it's like those shooter type games. Fans of Gradius and R-Type. Eternal Eyes, a strategy game. I love those strategy games. Those of you they're like Final Fantasy Tactics and so forth. Disgaea, those who are fans of Disgaea of today. Eternal Eyes is like that. Not as good, but similar. Fear Effect. Fear Effect 2. Final Doom. I was never a real big Doom fan. This I got really, really cheap many, many years after it came out. Final Fantasy Anthology. For the PlayStation, they re-released Final Fantasy V and Final Fantasy VI, which were ports from the Super Famicom and Super Nintendo. Somehow I have another copy of it. I don't know how. Maybe a friend brought it over or something and left it over. Don't know. One of my favorite games of all time, Final Fantasy VII. This is the game that made RPGs mainstream here in the United States. Sort of like, well, at least it made Final Fantasy mainstream. Yeah, definitely one of the best games that ever come out. Final Fantasy VI, I think, was one of the pinnacles for Final Fantasy, and then when this came out, there was just a whole slew of RPGs that started coming out for the PlayStation. That's the game that started it all, though. Final Fantasy VIII, not as good as Final Fantasy VII. Final Fantasy IX, pretty good. Similar to the old Final Fantasies for Famicom. Final Fantasy Tactics, one of the best strategy games of all time. Front Mission 3, another Squaresoft strategy game. Using mechs. Gran Turismo. I don't even know if Gran Turismo still comes out. The very, very first Grand Theft Auto. Let me get rid of some of that glare. Cartia. This was also on Don's video. Another strategy game. Strategy RPG. King of Fighters 95. Okay. It's another row. Bear with me as I remove this without dropping them. Knockout Kings. The second Legacy of Kain game, Soul Reaver. One of the last RPGs, well, not really one of the last, but last few years of the PlayStation's life, Legend of the Dragoon. Really, really cool game. Sequel to Secret of Mana for Super Nintendo, The Legend of Mana. Move this back. Lunar, the Silver Star Story Complete. This is a port of the old Sega CD game. Lunar 2, another port. The very first Medal of Honor, in my opinion, the very best. Oh, sorry. You're getting a lot of glare with that. Medal of Honor 2, pretty good game. Big fan of the Mega Man games. Can't wait for Mighty No. 9 to come out. Mega Man 8. I still have all the other Mega Mans for Nintendo. Mega Man Legends, 3D Mega Man, Mega Man X4, Mega Man X5. Metal Gear. This is the first of the Metal Gear Solid series. Metal Gear previously came out for Nintendo, but this is the first of the Solid series. I think that some of the characters in Metal Gear, the Metal Gear story, well, not story, Metal Gear mythos are really, really good. Never a big fan of the story, though, in any of the Metal Gears. I've always thought that the series was somewhat overrated, but this was probably one of the best in the series. That's just my opinion. Monopoly. Getting to another row. Okay. Mortal Kombat The Mythologies, Sub-Zero. Mortal Kombat Trilogy. This was the very first PlayStation game I bought for the system. Awesome game. I played that game until the disc like turned to friggin' ash. NBA Live 97. NBA Live 98. NBA Live 99. I didn't buy these when they first came out. I got them cheap because my friend really liked NBA games and I would play those games with him, but I was never a big sports fan. Need for Speed 3. Ogre Battle. This is a port of the old Super Nintendo Ogre Battle. Pretty good game. Not for everybody, but it's almost like a strategy RPG. A little different. 1. Overblood. Almost like Resident Evil. Creepy in its own right, but not as good as Resident Evil. Parasite Eve. Pretty cool game. Perfect Weapon. Another RPG, Persona. Interesting game. Bought this one used for $1.99. Power Move Pro Wrestling. Rampage. If those of you familiar with the old Rampage from the arcades, you'll know how to play that one. The original Resident Evil. Very good game. Resident Evil 2 I thought was a little better than Resident Evil. Not as scary, but better. Fixed a lot of issues with it. Resident Evil 3. Resident Evil Director's Cut. Resident Evil Survivor. Sort of like a Doom Resident Evil. Rival Schools. And Rogue Trip. Sort of like a Twisted Metal. Getting right down to it. Let me just get rid of this row. Here we have row after row after row. Told you I was a big PlayStation fan. Wasn't kidding. Okay. RPG Maker. This was a game that allowed fans to finally try to create their own, very own RPG game. There's a big learning curve to it. If you get into it, it could be pretty cool. Never really got into it though. Sayuki, Journey West, another strategy game. Strategy games are some of my favorites. Samurai Showdown 3. Silent Hill, the first Silent Hill. Really creepy game. Very moody. SimCity 2000. Soul Blade. This is the very first of the Soul series. You know, they're called Soul Calibur now, but originally in the arcade they were called Soul Edge. And then they released this for the PlayStation and renamed Soul Edge Soul Blade. The sequel to this was the original Soul Calibur for the Sega Dreamcast, which was probably one of the best fighting games. Soul the Samurai. Here we are, comic book game. Spawn, not very good. Spider-Man, pretty good. Star Trek Invasion. Star Wars Jedi Power Battles. Star Wars, this is the fighting Star Wars game. Star Wars Masters of Terraskasi. Star Wars Rebel Assault. Street Fighter Alpha 3. I think it's the best of the Alpha series. Street Fighter Collection. Street Fighter EX plus A, which the A stands for Alpha. Strider 2. One of my favorite RPGs ever. Suikoden. What I like even better than that, Suikoden 2. Super Puzzle Fighter 2 Turbo. Only got 2 more rows. Siphon Filter. This was also on Don's video. Really, oh, before I go on, let me just get rid of this row. Sorry. Siphon Filter, though, like I was saying, really cool game when it first came out. Siphon Filter. Siphon Filter 2. Siphon Filter 3. Tactics Ogre, another one of those strategy games I love. Tecmo's Deception, very unique game. You have to trap enemies instead of fight them, you know, in combat. Really unique, really cool. The original Tekken. Tekken 2, another one that was on Don's video. The best Tekken, in my opinion, Tekken 3. Tenchu. Tenchu 2, I thought this was a little better, especially it had a create your own level simulator, which will make you play that game for hours. Threads of Fate, another one of those RPG games released because of the Final Fantasy VII boom in later years. Tobal number 1. It's an obscure Squaresoft fighting game, Tobal number 1. Tobal number 2, but it's the Japanese version. My PlayStation was modded in New York. Tomb Raider 2. Tomb Raider 3. Tony Hawk's Pro Skater. This was like really, really popular when it first came out. It was a good game. Twisted Metal. Twisted Metal 2, in my opinion, the best of the PlayStation 1 Twisted Metal games. Twisted Metal 3. Twisted Metal 4. Vagrant Story. And now we're on the last row, which isn't even a full row. Give me a second while I grab them. Call them rows because they're on rows on my cabinet here. So, Valkyrie Profile. Vandal Hearts, another excellent strategy game. Even better than Vandal Hearts. Vandal Hearts 2. Harder, but in my opinion, a little better. Warcraft 2. Warhawk in the old jewel case. String of wrestling games now. WCW Nitro, which wasn't very good. WCW Mayhem, which wasn't very good. WCW Thunder, which was the worst. WCW vs. the World, which was really good. It actually set the standard for some really good wrestling games by THQ in the late 90s. WWF Attitude. WWF In Your House. WWF SmackDown. WWF SmackDown 2. WWF Warzone. WWF WrestleMania arcade game. That one's like in your house, like real action, not real wrestling moves. Xenogears, and we end it all with a comic book game, X-Men Mutant Academy. Well, I hope you enjoyed the video. I tried to go through it as fast as I can. Not too much detail, not too many details. Those of you that have a favorite PlayStation game or even a favorite video game system, I tag you to show some of your games or show some of your systems out. But once again, thanks to Don and Punkhead66 for starting this. I thought this was a really cool topic to just talk a little bit about and to showcase some games that were really, really cool to play in our youth. Thanks for watching.